The night air in the West Wing was always cold, a deliberate choice. It preserved the integrity of the 17th century tapestries, the delicate lacquer on the Ming vases. Tonight, however, the cold felt different. It was a predator, seeping through the marble floors, coiling around Valentine's ankles. He adjusted the silk lapels of his smoking jacket, a useless gesture of control in a world rapidly spinning out of it. The first sound was a pop, sharp and intrusive, like a champagne cork released with violent intent. It came from the grand hall. A second later, the chandelier, a cascade of Venetian crystal, worth more than a small island, went dark. The security panel on his wrist buzzed, a frantic, meaningless vibration. "Perimeter breach, Zone 1, the automated voice announced, its calm infuriatingly out of place. Valentine didn't run. Panic was a luxury he couldn't afford. He walked, his steps measured, towards the source of the disturbance. His heart was a frantic drum against the cage of his ribs, but his face remained a mask of aristocratic indifference. He had built this empire, this fortress of solitude and wealth, with a mind as sharp as cut glass. He would not allow it to be dismantled by, what, a thief? A vandal? The thought was absurd. His security was legendary, impenetrable. He entered the grand hall. Shards of crystal littered the Persian rug like fallen stars. The massive oak doors, reinforced with steel, stood wide open, a gaping wound in the side of his home. There was no one there, just the wind, whispering through the broken entryway, carrying the scent of rain and ruin. Then, a crash from the gallery upstairs, a sound he knew intimately, the shattering of porcelain. He pictured it instantly, the Song Dynasty ceramics, a collection he had spent 3 decades curating, now just dust and fragments. He moved faster now, not quite running, but with a new urgency propelling him forward. The alarms were blaring, a symphony of failure. The red emergency lights pulsed, casting long, dancing shadows that twisted the familiar shapes of his home into monstrous forms. He was being hunted. Not for his life, he realized, but for his legacy. This wasn't a robbery. It was an execution. An annihilation of everything he was, everything he had built. He passed the library. The doors were splintered. Through the gap, he could see flames licking at the spines of first edition classics. The smell of burning paper, of history turning to ash, filled his lungs. Each destroyed object was a memory, a victory, a piece of his soul. And it was all being systematically erased. He needed to get to the East Wing, to the server room. The digital backups, the offshore accounts, the myriad firewalls that protected the true source of his power, his financial data. That was the core. The rest was just beautiful, expensive window dressing. He took the servants' passage, a narrow, dark corridor hidden behind a bookshelf in the West Conservatory. He knew every secret of this house. He had designed them himself. The air in the passage was thick with the smell of damp stone and dust. His ragged breaths echoed in the tight space. The sounds of destruction were more muffled here, a distant, rhythmic demolition. It was a heartbeat, the house's dying heartbeat. He emerged into the modern, sterile corridor of the East Wing. The change was jarring. Here, there was no antique wood or plush carpet, only brushed steel and recessed lighting. But the chaos had followed him. Wires hung from the ceiling like dead vines, sparking intermittently. Monitors were smashed, their screens a spiderweb of fractured glass. The attack was comprehensive. It was intelligent. It knew where to hit, how to wound him most deeply. His destination was just ahead, a titanium-plated door with a biometric scanner. The sanctum. The one place no one could enter. His last line of defense. He pressed his thumb against the scanner. Nothing. He tried again. The small screen remained blank, lifeless. The power was cut. Of course, so simple. So devastatingly effective. He used the manual override, a complex sequence of codes he had memorized decades ago. The heavy door hissed open. A wave of relief, cold and sharp, washed over him. He stumbled inside, sealing the door behind him. Silence. Blessed, absolute silence. The room was small, Spartan. A single desk, a chair, and a wall of servers, their indicator lights dark and inert. For a moment, he just stood there, leaning against the cold metal door, allowing the silence to soothe his frayed nerves. He had lost the house, the art, the artifacts. But he was alive. And the core of his fortune, the digital ghost of his wealth, was here. It could be recovered. He could rebuild. He was Valentine. He always rebuilt. He walked towards the desk, a strange sense of calm settling over him. He would wait for sunrise. He would call his contacts. He would unleash a fury they couldn't possibly imagine. He ran a hand over his face, feeling the exhaustion settle deep into his bones. His fingers brushed against something on the polished surface of the desk. A piece of paper. Small, stiff, and rectangular. It was sitting perfectly in the center, as if placed there for his inspection. His blood ran cold. It was impossible. No one could get in here. No one. With a trembling hand, he reached for it. He didn't need to turn on the backup light on his watch to know what it was. He could feel the embossed symbol under his thumb. A single stylized scorpion. The mark of the creditor he had tried so desperately to outrun. The one shadow from his past he could never quite shake. The card was a message. A declaration of checkmate. They hadn't needed to breach the sanctum. They were already inside. They had been inside his life, his finances, his home, this whole time. They owned him. The realization hit him not like a wave, but like a slow, crushing weight. The destruction of his mansion wasn't the attack. It was the bill. The invoice for a debt he could never repay. He sank into the chair, the card slipping from his numb fingers. The strength, the composure, the lifetime of carefully constructed control, it all crumbled into dust. A single dry sob escaped his lips. Outside the sanctum, the last of the emergency lights flickered and died, plunging the world into absolute darkness. All that was left was the silence and the symbol of his utter, complete ruin.